Northeast and North Central Pennsylvania are home to a handful of remarkable people who created or built businesses that together employ thousands of us. These are regional leaders who quietly give away millions of dollars to improve our lives and who actively mentor young people to someday take their place. This is the WVIA Northeast Pennsylvania Business Journal. Now, your host, Bill Kelly.
Larry Sarno is not alone among our interviewees when he says it was not easy working side by side with his father. Two independent men is how Larry describes it. But things are easier now. Sarno and Son is in the imaginative hands of his son and daughter. Larry has learned to keep his distance, and the very competitive business of renting and selling formal wear is thriving.
I'm Larry Sarno, and I helped develop a business called Sarno and Son. It's a formal wear business, and we've been doing it for 70 years. And it was started by my father, and in 1957 I took over, and the business expanded greatly over the years, and to this day it's still expanding.
Modesty, Larry Sarno, modesty accompanies every great entrepreneur that I've done in these interviews. When you describe who you are and what you did, you have a lot to be proud of.
Yes, I have a lot to be proud of, and I have a lot to be thankful for. I had good people that stood by me and worked with me and did a marvelous job, and they're part of it, you know. It's not just one man. It's everybody that's been working with Sarno and doing a job that they had to do.
I can't imagine many people watching in the 20 counties of northeastern Pennsylvania that this television station serves that haven't heard in one fashion or another Sarno and Son menswear.
Yeah.
Very well-known name.
Yeah.
How many years? You said 70 years in business coming up. Yeah. Would your father, who created the business, right, recognize the business you have today?
Let me tell you a little bit about my father.
Please do.
In 1929-30, around there was a Great Depression in this country. Mm-hmm. He was working in Philadelphia in the custom-made tailoring business. He had a job in a place called Rittenhouse Square in Philadelphia. At that time, things slowed down in Philly, and the boss was going to lay him off. And he said, before you do anything, there's a gentleman up in Scranton that needs your kind of expertise. Why don't you go up there and talk to him? My father said, I'm on my way to California. I'll stop in Scranton. So we stopped in Scranton to a fellow named Mosier who'd done custom-made clothes. At that time, the mines were working, and I don't think the Depression was that severe as it was in other places because of the mines, and the people had to keep warm, and the factories had to keep going, and it was coal that they were depending on. And he settled here.
Didn't make it to California?
Didn't make it to California.
And this is Ralph we're talking about,
yeah.
Is that your father?
Yeah. And in 1940, he worked he worked for Mosier, and he worked around, and then he decided he was going to open his own place. In 1940, he opened up a tailor shop in the Chamber of Commerce building. In a short time, he had 6 men working on benches, you know, making custom-made clothes. He did that for 15, 17 years. 1957.
Let's stop there, and we'll come
Right.
back to the story. But let me hone in a little bit on the things you said. He, like you, was and is a master tailor.
Yeah.
What is that?
Oh. Well, I'll tell you, he wasn't only a tailor, he was a designer. He could take a piece of paper, cut a pattern, draw a pattern, cut it out, put it on material, and make a suit. Today they use computers to do that, you know. And there are a few people still around that in Philadelphia or New York, and you'll pay $5,000 for one of those suits. Yeah. Takes 33 hours to put a coat together.
Was he better as a master tailor than yourself?
Yes, he was.
In what way?
Well, we saw the business sliding away. People were going to ready-mades. They would go to Hart, Schaffner and Marx,
Sure.
and go to Hickey Freeman and all those who made a good suit, but it wasn't a custom-made suit. And we decided that in 1957, when he retired, I decided that I was going to do one thing or get out of the business. And I decided to go into the formal wear business. And I could see that it was something that was needed, you know. And I dressed up the front of the windows and dressed the store up like it was a real high-class formal wear store. And people would come in and say, you took this business out of the back room and put it in the front room.
And it was in the back
room. It was
room.
in the back room.
Right.
You know. And pretty soon we were doing well. And then I decided that I needed to expand. And the only way that I could expand was go wholesale.
I'm going to come back to you. Stay with me, Larry, but I don't want to miss the really beautiful parts of this story and go too fast. Mm-hmm. Back to tailoring. I can remember as a boy coming to Samter's mm-hmm. in Scranton, long gone, mm-hmm. Samter's men's shop, I think it was, and watching tailors prepare clothing for my father. Yeah. They weren't $5,000 then, of course, and it was rather natural. I mean, it was, you wanted a suit, it was just part of the whole thing. Right. Is the skill of tailoring mm-hmm. one of those many skills in our country which is disappearing?
It's disappearing. Yeah. It's, I can remember a person coming in and picking out a piece of material, and we would start from that, you know, and then they would have try-on periods where they would come in and the suit would be a quarter done, 3/4 done. And, you know, do we move the sleeves? Do we do what we have to do, you know, to make it look like he's... And we'd put the time in.
A lot of time. And, do you regret that part of our history, that profession, that skill is leaving us?
Yeah. Yeah, because we had 6 tailors sitting on benches working all day long, you know, sewing, putting up, you know.
And when you say we,
my father.
You're okay.
Yeah, and
but not this business. When you had 6 tailors.
Yeah, and I stood alongside of him for like 7 or 8 years, learning that business, learning how to shrink the material before we start and all that. That's all gone now, you know.
I take note of, again in my notes here. This is a recurring theme in these interviews, generational change. Mm-hmm. After World War II, you learned the tailoring trade next to your dad, and it says here, no easy feat. 2 independent men working side by side several times in these interviews. The first generation is described as loving and wonderful, but stubborn, really stubborn, and hard to work side by side. Expectations higher. Flexibility lower. Is this true of you and your father?
Yeah, well, he wanted to send me away to learn. And I said, you send me away to learn, I won't go. I'll learn here from you, or I don't learn at all. And that was it. Yeah. He wanted to send me to somebody else because I don't know whether he thought that he wasn't getting across to me or what, you know, and he was.
Have you passed on what you know to your son Mark and your daughter Nancy?
No.
How come?
It's altogether different. The business we're in today is altogether different. There's little spots of it, you know. We had a problem a couple years ago where we were deep in debt, and I would spend a winters remodeling the old suits to make them look like new, which custom tailoring helped me through those times, you know. And Sandy talks about it today.
Sandy,
remember? You know.
Sandy Taffera?
Yeah.
For those of you who've ever used Sarno and Son over the years, Sandy has been with you 3 decades or more?
4 decades.
4 decades.
Yeah.
Sandy's a wonderful guy, and he's a part of...
He came when he was 17.
My goodness.
His brother sent him to learn a trade. And I called his brother and I said, you know, I can't pay this fella. I said, I'm not making that kind of money that I can pay him a salary. He said, who says pay him? Teach him.
Wow.
You know, so I started him at $60 a week, you know, and...
You have other Sandys, although not quite that long in service, but you have quite a few people who've grown with the business with you.
Yeah, yeah. There's a gentleman named Tom Perry who worked right alongside us, and no matter the hours or whatever it was, and he was a great part of the business. And he was 82. He just retired last year.
May I ask how old you are?
81.
81. Are you still there often? At the plant?
Yeah.
At the locations?
Yeah.
How involved are you in the business?
Oh, I'm not involved anymore. Mark will ask me different questions, and, you know, I'll answer them, and if he takes my advice, fine. If he doesn't, that's okay.
Was it that easy from the beginning, Larry? Entrepreneurs, those who really create businesses and turn them over to the next generation, have a very hard time letting go.
I had a year and a half that I would just shake, you know, when I saw things going on, and I wanted to, you know, and I just back up. My father once told me, he said, if you want to get to Lackawanna Avenue, I'll give you the shortest possible route. If you want to go another way, that's up to you. I took that as a lesson, because that's what I want my kids to learn and know. You know, if you're going to make a mistake, it's a way of learning. You're not going to make that mistake again, you know. And that's the way I figure it out.
Let's give the audience some sort of understanding of how big it is versus how big it was. When you first took over from your father, describe in some way how big Sarno and Son, was it Sarno and Son from that time?
Yeah.
How big it was, volume, in any way you can, and where it is now.
When I took over, it was one store, right? And it was in the Chamber of Commerce building. And we were doing very well. And then I had people coming in from the surrounding area.
What is doing very well? Give me an idea. One store, Chamber of Commerce building.
Our big week was like 800 suits going out.
800 suits?
Yeah. And Sandy and I and 2 other fellows were working there. And I decided that because I could see people coming from Carbondale and all around the surrounding areas, renting suits from us and then renting them out to their own places, right, their own stores. And I thought this could be a wholesale business too, you know. And I put Sandy in a truck with a made-up catalog. And he went out. And from then on in, the business started to grow. And we moved up to Blakely Street because there was, I think it was 13,000 square feet there we needed. And we remodeled that plant. And we started into the retail and the wholesale business. And at one time we had 7 places from Syracuse to Williamsport. And they weren't doing too well after a while. I don't know, something happened that we sort of focused in on more wholesale and gave these places over to the managers, and they managed them, and we would supply them, and that's how we really got into the wholesale business.
You grew rapidly.
Yes,
though,
we
didn't
did.
you?
Yes, we did.
And I did notice in some of these notes you've had some rather famous renters of suits. Luciano Pavarotti.
Yeah.
You have a Washington location, is that right?
Yep.
Vice President Al Gore, Senator Ted Kennedy,
Yeah.
Alan Greenspan.
Yeah.
Now, how do you get to know that these people have rented your?
Their names are right on the
They're on the
suits.
rental document.
Yeah, right on the slip. And you know the fellow on Fox, Hume.
Brit Hume.
Brit Hume. Him a couple of times. See, these people do have their own tuxedos.
One would think.
But if they're going 2 nights in a row or 3 nights in a row,
see.
they want a fresh suit. So they'll rent one, you know. I'll never forget Bill Scranton when he was in the Congress.
Congressman Bill Scranton.
Yeah. He called and he said, I need a full dress suit. I said, Bill, you're 40 long? He said, yes, I'm 40 long, I'm this, I'm that. I put the full dress suit in a box and shipped it to him. He shipped it back with a note and says, it came, it saw, it conquered. I hope
great.
Bill sees this.
Well, we'll make sure that he does.
If he remembers that.
What was
It came, it saw, it conquered.
What was as you look back on how many years in business?
70.
70 years yourself.
No. I started after the Second World War.
Okay.
In 48, because I was in the service till 48 and I got out.
So some 40 years
Yeah.
yourself in the
Yeah.
business. When was if there was a time in all of that, as you're growing the business, taking risks as an entrepreneur, when you were most scared that it might not work?
I used to go to the bank on my hands and knees, you know, please, you know. Sometimes I got turned down, sometimes I was lucky. Yeah. And I got in trouble once. I owed $400,000 to my suppliers. And there was a supplier in New York named Harvey Weinstein, good friend of mine. And he said, we're going to get you out of this, Larry. He said, it's going to take 3 years, but we'll do it. We'll get you out and you'll be all right. And he would give me enough new inventory to stay up to date, you know, for those in the 3 years that we worked. And I kept paying the bills, kept paying the $400,000 that I owed. This was back 30 years ago. $400,000 like $1 million today.
Yes, right.
And we got through it. And he became a very good friend. He came to Nancy's wedding. Nancy goes to New York to visit him, you know. He died last year. Yeah.
And you have gratitude for that,
Yeah.
that loyalty. We want to talk about Mark, your son, and Nancy, your daughter, here in a moment. But I want to go a little further into the spirit of entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. You just admitted to a very, I would imagine, very stressful, worrisome period of Sarno and Son menswear, $500,000 in debt, and how you got through it. Do you recognize that there is something different, just in character, in willpower, in relentlessness, in an entrepreneur that isn't in most of us?
Today, most people have other people running their companies. You know, do they really get into it? Do they really live the thing? Do they, you know? I have a lot of friends who are successful in business, but they have other people running it, you know. Uh, I, 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 I don't know.
Well, you would have other people running it if you didn't have a daughter and son who wanted to be running it.
Yeah. I would have sold it, Bill.
Would you rather
Yeah.
have done that?
Yeah, I would have sold it. Yeah. In fact, I told the kids, I said, do I sell this place or do you want it? Don't sell it, Dad. We want it. Okay.
Did you had to ask, though. You didn't know that they really wanted to run and own it. Or did you sense it beforehand?
They were working in it, you know. They were doing good job. And I wanted to step out. I wanted to give them a chance. I wanted to see them do it before I died, you know.
Sure.
And about 12 years ago, I stepped out. And I'm glad I did, because I had some time for myself and a time to enjoy seeing them double the business since I left.
Have they doubled it since you left?
Yeah.
You must be extraordinarily proud of that.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I happen to be one of the luckiest men in the world because I got two kids that lived the life, lived the business.
As you did.
As I did. Yeah.
But aren't there lessons, Larry, in that? Did you see as much of your children as you wanted to? Did you have to make that sacrifice coming up?
Yeah. I used to work from 7 in the morning till 9 at night in the store, right?
Yeah.
And then Saturdays I would work from 7 in the morning till 5. And Sundays I would be the only day with my kids, you know. And I decided if I got big enough, I could have Saturday off. It happened.
Okay, so now we cycle ahead a generation. You said a few moments ago that you're one of the luckiest guys in the world because your kids live the business.
Yeah.
They're living it, but did they learn from Dad that they shouldn't, and I'm presuming that's how you feel, give that much time and sacrifice to the business, so you miss the wonderful joy of being a father in many ways?
Now they have an organization. They have an organization that they can afford and they can pay good salaries. And these people are dedicated Sarno and Son people. I didn't have that. I had Sandy to rely on. I had Tom Perry in the plant. I had a couple. But it was push, shove, and go all the time, you know. And now today, they can take a day off. They can do what they want. They have other people to assume the responsibilities that I didn't have. They have an organization.
Okay. You are more than you're admitting to, nor have I asked you yet. You're an artist. I've seen a little bit of your artwork that was brought to the studio, and we're going to show it as part of this interview. But where did that come from, and when did it start? And what does it do for you?
It's a thing, I can relax doing that, you know. I can think about what a tree should look like, what a rock should look like, what a horse should be, how a horse should look, what his conformation is, and it's a thought in your head that you just can't, you know, you have to dwell on it, you know, and you have to work with it. And
it's beautiful artwork.
I was out west, and this was in the early 60s, and I saw artwork out there, Western artwork, and they wanted $30,000, $40,000 for a picture. And I says, I can't afford that. I'm going home and paint them myself. Bill, I did.
I know you did.
Yeah.
And the American West is a continuing theme of what I've seen you do.
Yeah, yeah. And knowing horses, knowing the conformation of the horse, it was easy for me to sketch them and draw them and paint them, you know. And
Okay.
I paint buffalo.
Not only that, what'd you say a few moments ago? You're 81?
81.
81, and you're riding
Yeah.
every weekend. You're on a horse
Yeah.
every weekend.
Yeah. And sometimes on Wednesdays, a couple guys will call, an attorney or a couple other fellows will say, they belong to the same club, and they say, let's go riding. I go up, we go out for a couple hours.
Where do you go?
We go, it's in Factoryville. And I used to board my horse there, you know, and we'll get together on a Saturday and there'll be 10, 15 of us at one time. We'll go out for 2 or 3 hours, you know, sometimes on a Sunday.
And what, instead of golf, for instance, what does that do for you?
It relaxes you. You know, you go down, you go out, you clean the horse off, you saddle him up, you get on, you go for a ride, you come back. You take them, you cool them down, you clean them up, you put them away. By that time it's noon. You walk, and they have a bar in the place where you can have a couple drinks, you know. Sometimes somebody's there and they cook lunch for us, you know.
It's a passion of, horses are a passion of your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, we have to sum up. Most proud of, you've had an interesting life, very successful life, started with very little.
Yes.
And look what you turned over to your kids. As you look back, what are you most proud of? What's the source of greatest satisfaction in Larry Sarno's life?
Leave someone here better than yourself.
And you are?
I am.
And how do you know that?
I know it.
A life well lived?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There have been ups and downs, but that makes it more interesting.
Well, your daughter Nancy is in the room with us, and I know she's extremely proud of you because we talked about doing this interview with you beforehand. Mm-hmm. The pride of your kids makes a huge difference, doesn't it?
Yeah. Leave someone here better than yourself.
Would you do anything differently?
Oh, sure.
Give me one, because we have 1 minute left. Anything come to mind?
Not really, but if I could, you know, have a thought I could think of. There were times that I made big mistakes, but I made big moves, you know.
You never gave up, that's for
sure. I never
sure.
gave up. And I, you know, instead of saying, oh, well, I give up, I went back to the drawing board and started over again. I one time fired my plant manager. He was making $45,000 a year. I took my suit off and went back in the plant.
To do what he did.
To do what he did.
And you always could do that.
Yeah.
That's harder to do these days than ever,
oh, yeah.
with technology being what it is.
Well, today it's all computer and all, you know.
Right.
Years ago it was pencil and paper and, you know.
It has been a wonderful privilege to get to know you better, and thanks for coming to the show.
Thanks for taking care of me, Bill.
Ed Dietz could not wait to start building businesses and eventually a fortune. This is one of those rare and remarkable stories of